Immigration reform is being debated both on the Republican side and the Democratic side. A couple of the crazies on the Republican side cannot talk about it without referring to it as amnesty, and once they've labeled it that, they're against it. And so we've got quotes from Michele Bachmann and Coulter talking about the immigration reform and the apocalyptic effects it might have if it passes. So first, Michele Bachmann, she says, "This is President Obama's #1 political agenda item, because he knows we will never again have a Republican president, ever, if amnesty goes into effect. We will perpetually have a progressive liberal president, probably a Democrat, and we will probably see the House of Representatives go into Democrat hands, and the Senate will stay in Democrat hands." Now, she's soon to be not a politician. You would expect that while she's in the office, she would be a little bit more politically responsible. Not the case with her. Let's move into someone who has no history of political responsibility, Ann Coulter. Now, she's banned on the Young Turks, not yet banned here. We'll see how it shakes out in the coming months. She says, before we get to her quotes, by the way, she was on Hannity, and they had a little fight. They got a little bit feisty. They had a little cat fight. And so I love how juvenile this ended up being. So Hannity says, "You're not answering my question. You're like a liberal." And she responds, "No, nothing. You, on the contrary, you're like a liberal." That's how two political adults sound when they're debating the issues. But anyway, moving past that little grievance with her, I think that she's ridiculous. She says, "If amnesty happens, America is over. And the only thing left for people like you and me to do, Sean, is to punish the people who destroyed America." And so look, the common thread going throughout these two insane women's arguments is that if amnesty passes, if immigration reform passes, and we have more Hispanics move into the country, demographically, you know that they're likely to vote for Democrats, especially if they move into areas like Nevada, Texas, maybe Florida, I guess. Traditional swing states or states that we expect in the coming decades to be swing states, if they could flip that to the Democrats, then it seems like all else being equal, you will never again have a Republican voted into office as president of the United States. The problem is all else is not equal. And when you're talking about something that could take 1, 2, 3 decades to happen, expecting that you can change one variable and keep all the others constant, that's at best politically naive. And look, I'm gonna attack both Democrats and Republicans here. So we talked about this recently in the Young Turks, and Cenk does believe that if a significant number of Hispanics move into the country, it will mean that basically we'll never have another Republican. And I understand why he says that, the eagerness behind it, the desire to have actual Democrats be voted into office and possibly actually pass some liberal legislation. I get that, and I understand that, and I also understand why Ann Coulter is speaking so apocalyptically. Perversely, it's actually kind of in her interest for this to happen. Because if you always had Democratic presidents, she would always have somebody to scapegoat, somebody to attack in her stupid little books. And so for her, it actually would kind of have a silver lining. Here's the thing. Political parties are not static. They change over time. The groups that make up political parties changes too. So at one point, environmentalists didn't necessarily always follow the Democrats. At one point, Nixon created the EPA and things like that. But the Democrats passed legislation that the environmentalists liked. In part, they're not doing enough on global warming, but whatever, this is the example I'm using. And so now you can expect that environmentalists will probably, for the most part, vote for the Democrats. And so, but these groups can change. If in the future the Republicans actually did something that was good for the environment, maybe they'd get some more voters from those environmentalists. And in the same way, let's say hypothetically 50 million Hispanics moved in, they all voted for the Democrats, and we had 3 presidential cycles go by, and they're all Democrat, Democrat, Democrat because of the votes of these Hispanics. The idea that the Republicans would just continue to throw up xenophobic, anti-Hispanic assholes as their presidential nominees, that's absurd. Look, these parties are in some ways responsible to themselves at the very least, and to their electoral chances. And so, look, they would love to continue on, the Republicans would, in the way that they have, being xenophobic, anti-Hispanic, and racist, and all of that. But if the only way to get into power and to continue to pursue their other interests, like tax cuts and things like that, is to appeal to Hispanics, they will eventually do it. I know that their efforts up until this point have been laughable, but they will grow increasingly savvy at courting these voters if they become a more important or indeed vital part of the electorate. And so I understand the apocalyptic quotes from the right. I understand the happy, gleeful declarations of a future Democratic permanent majority from the left, but the actual situation, the actual future that we'll have in America is not so sexy as either of those. It will change. American politics will be different if immigration reform passes, but not in quite the ways that the left or right is most worried about.